my heart is filled with pain. When it comes to love, we don't feel the same. You said we were friends for so long. You said I'd again with you this way. But I lose my mind if I choose to stay.
Good morning, people of the internet. You're listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Point Blank 1 minute at a time. I'm your co-host, Hugh.
And I'm Dev, and on today's show, we're going to be looking at minute 4, which is beautifully framed as the minute that introduces our other favorite actor, Dan Ackroyd. And joining us for this minute, we have once again Neil McKay of the Man with a Music Minute podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
It's good to have you back. Yeah.
So, Dev, Grosse.
Yes.
Enter Grosse. It's literally what it says in the notes. That's all it says here. It just says enter Grosse.
Yeah, it literally does. Yeah, my typical verbose style of writing that is as few words as possible. So yeah, sometimes with these movie by minute podcasts, you get a minute of a movie that is just so beautifully framed. It just, it's obviously not something that is really being thought about or designed for, but you just happen to have a minute that is just a beautiful slice of the movie. And I think this is one of those minutes. It starts with John Cusack's just done his job. He's wrapping up. He's getting ready to go. All of a sudden, behind the column, dressed beautifully as a doorman, is Dan Ackroyd. Comes out, shoots an alarming number of bullets for 2 6-shooters into the person that John Cusack Martin Blank was meant to be protecting, and the bodyguards and everybody around, and vanishes off. And then we cut to a different scene in this same minute of a very unhappy Martin Blank talking to his secretary again, and it just ends as this Lincoln with an unknown driver speeds up to him, and it makes me happy to see a minute like this. It is just so wonderfully framed.
Okay, I have to ask, why does it make you feel happy?
It's just the symmetry of it. The fact that this minute on its own tells its own story. Like, I could sit down as if this was a 60-second TV commercial and watch it and be content. I mean, I'd probably prefer that the last of the credits weren't rolling over the top of it, because that doesn't make much sense. But that aside, you've got this just very nicely enclosed minute that really describes, I think, Dan Aykroyd's talent quite well as well.
Yeah.
So, Neil, were you given your experience? What's your experience of Dan Aykroyd?
Oh, he's such an iconic actor. I loved so many of his movies growing up, from obviously Ghostbusters and what's it called? Oh my God, my mind's gone blank.
Trading Places.
Trading Places. That's the one. I mean, Trading Places itself is like there's questionable things in there now with their costumes at the end.
Such a great movie.
But it's such a great movie all the way through it, and we won't go into that. We'll leave that for Trading Places minute to go into the.
We might have to do that. Now you've said it, I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah, I definitely
I think that one may be out there already. If it isn't, I'm surprised. I know.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
I think one thing I love about this minute is the way that it sets up Dan Aykroyd's character as being so different from John Cusack's character. I was thinking about the name Grosse, and so close to Grosse. I was thinking, are they saying that Martin Blank is Grosse, and he acts in a way that's point blank? And I didn't know. I don't know if you've gone into this in your first 2 minutes, but I always thought point blank meant close up, because you're close up to somebody and you shoot them point blank. But no, that's a point
Right.
blank range. You might know a bit
Right.
more about this with your cadets at school. Point blank is
Right.
actually, if you're firing something, it goes direct. You don't have to change the way that you're aiming to adjust for the projectile, whether it's a bullet or an arrow or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You don't have to adjust for the gravity to make the arrow go a bit lower. It's so
Mm-hmm.
close that it's straight, it's direct. So when
Yeah.
somebody is point blank, they're being direct and blunt. And of course, Martin Blank, he just tells everybody he's a killer all the way through the movie. He is very blunt, and he says himself he's a psychopath. Basically, he has that
Mm.
mindset. So he probably has gone through his whole life just being blunt to everybody. So he's
Mm.
gross and he's point blank, but Dan Aykroyd is grosser.
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
he's
Absolutely
worse.
right.
He's still in
Yeah.
the business. He wants to even make a union. He's still um, he lives the violent lifestyle, and he doesn't see any
Mm.
problem with that. So
Yeah.
the way that they had Blank aiming for the shoulder and doing the
Yeah.
least damage possible to get the outcome, whereas you've got Grosse just shooting as much as he can, 100
Mm.
bullets from two guns.
Mm. Mm.
I
Mm.
didn't count them up,
Yeah.
but there was a lot.
I mean, the thing is that, and it's the guns themselves, as we were saying last episode about the economy of these opening minutes and how character is conveyed very quickly. And as you say, the name alone, but we don't hear his name just yet. And as Dev said, when he steps forward, I realized that we didn't mention in the last minute, right? That there's actually a moment where you can see there's a doorman, right? It's
Oh,
just very briefly in the background of one of the shots, and you don't realize it's Aykroyd, right? Because you don't see it. So they know what they're doing with this film. They've set this up. They're shooting it. They know what they're doing. And so when he steps forward, the film moves, puts the camera in a place where, as you say, Dev, we see him. We know it's him. He steps forward. And then he, as you say, he's got these guns. And what I like is that as a doorman, he pulls out these guns and he pulls them out like a gunslinger, right? Cross draw, two revolvers, they're 44 Magnums, so they're flipping huge. They're chrome. They're chrome, so they're shiny. And in addition to that, these are not your standard Magnums. They've got an additional barrel support where they don't need to. They've got extra metal, right, hanging from me. I mean, I know he needs them in the sense that he doesn't want the recoil to lift it too far, which is why he's able to aim and shoot all those shots. But the point is, it's overkill in every sense of the word. They're literally big, flashy guns. Like, the guy is compensating so clearly, so obviously, and they obviously put very heavy loads in as well, because the bangs and the shot and the flame, everything that the camera captures and the sound. Boom! This is a guy who is just like, yeah, gets the job done, as you say, by spraying everything and everybody. But then what I find interesting is that he then suddenly becomes the professional again. He turns around, right? He drops the guns because he's not going to leave any evidence, because he's wearing white satin gloves, as befits a doorman, right? But so he's actually good enough to have the right cover for the role and for the job. But then he is blatantly over the top, blatantly in love with the moment of killing. And then he does the professional thing again and turns around, throws his coat over it as well, walks away. And if you've ever played the video game Hitman, it's much that's what it's like
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
It's like super obvious, and then you have to somehow stealthily get away. Like, really, dude, really. But it's beautiful. It's, as you say, it's grosser. After that wonderful precision and style and skill of Martin Q. Blank, here's the opposite:
Yeah.
sheer, unrelenting, old school American cowboy gunslinger style action.
And
And yeah, it is over the top.
and it is a reversal on what you'd expect for this kind of a movie, right? Like, if
Yes.
you'd look at like Guardians of the Galaxy or one of the big hits these days. Literally, it's the hero going in guns blazing right at the top of
Yeah.
the film, and what we have here is the exact opposite. It is
Yeah.
the rival, the that comes in and makes the big bangs, right?
Yep.
Not the masked rifle shot whilst covered by the the pistol
Mm.
sound of the initial hitman.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what's interesting is that because it's the same, because it's a hit on Martin's if we're trying to piece together what's happening, since it looks like Martin's job was to, I think you said this in the last podcast, Neil, it looks like he's taking a shot that allows them to save the man coming out the hotel, right? And now the man from the hotel is eliminated. And I feel like it feels like you're in the middle of a gang war, in the sense that here's another assassin taking out the person, as you said, Dev, Martin's protecting. But my first thought this time around watching it was like, wait a minute, who's going to pay Martin?
The-
I was like, who hired who to do which job and what's going on, And you realize there's all these layers, and you sort of think, wow, okay, this is already more complicated than I
and how
thought it
did they
would
know?
be.
How whoever hired Martin, how
Mm,
did they know that the other hitman was going to come cycling down the street at that moment? How did they know
precisely.
that he would have a good shot from that window to
Yeah,
rent out that apartment or whatever it is? And
yeah,
then how did the people that hired Dan Ackroyd, Grosse, how did they know
yeah,
that
yeah,
um, Blank was going to be there and that it wasn't
yeah,
going to go ahead as planned? It's
yeah,
it's so convoluted, and for the first minutes, once again, you're
yeah,
trying to figure out what's going on, and it's maybe
uh,
only the third or fourth time, or well, for me, because I'm looking at that 1 minute, it was maybe the
yeah.
third or fourth time I watched the minute that I thought, wait a sec, how do they all know what's going on?
I'm starting to wonder now, having just finished teaching the JFK assassination unit at school. I'm now starting to wonder if there's an unofficial commentary here on whether Oswald could have done it or not, because it's like he's in the room, he's on that floor, he's a moving target, right? He makes the shot. The shot, it's not where he aimed initially. It's not the head. He hits the shot, and then there's another shooter ready to clean up, and it's almost like this is the conspiracy theory about Kennedy, isn't it? Is
Yeah.
that there's the main shooter, and then there's somewhere there was a backup shooter in case.
Mhm.
And whether or not you believe that, and there's phenomenal amounts of evidence to indicate Oswald definitely took the shots with the rifle he did and hit Kennedy. There remains, even with the evidence we have in the last on the 50th anniversary and the most modern scientific analysis available, there's still a third shot unaccounted for, and we now have a memoir of one of the Secret Service agents on the day who's retired. He has just published his memoir for the first time, and he's going back on what he said to the Warren Commission. So it's one of those crazy bits of history that always rears its head at moments when I'm not expecting it, and I just feel like you've got a point there. This complexity, you sort of think, well, where's this all going? It's almost like they have people who are paying these guys. They must be the same person paying the two, right? It's got to be, because Martin's the main shot. Well, hang on, it's paying all three. Let me correct this: all three, right? It's got to be someone paying the messenger, because that's the obvious hit. Someone paying Martin to eliminate the messenger, right? And make it look like, so that you take care of that guy as well. But the hit you have, and then the third person to finish it all off. And it's like, maybe that could be the case, or did Grosse, was Grosse always meant to shoot that guy? In which case he's not part of it, because he would be hired by the guy who hired the bike messenger, and he's the backup.
Yeah, that's how I'd taken it to be, was that
Yeah,
the bike
great.
messenger was hired to take this guy out, and they found out about it, so they hired.
Yeah.
And it's just escalation, right? It's just an
Yes,
arms race. It's
and
like,
that's
well,
the joke, isn't it?
yeah,
And
exactly.
that's the comic element, is you've just seen the arms race in miniature.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the weaponry reflects that, right? You go from a very, very
yeah,
discreet concealed pistol on a cyclist just riding down the street, to a
yeah,
rifle that you can't really hide when it's out there, to just no F's given, giant chromed up, blinged out, heavy duty, the largest caliber pistol you can get your hands on, two of
yeah,
them, because we
yeah.
need more than one.
That's so clever. That's so clever that they just did that in such a simple way and such a short space of time.
Yeah.
So
I
let's
thought
talk
that
Ackroyd. Oh, gosh, I go
I
now.
thought that Ackroyd might have been there just to make sure that it went down okay. That the person that was supposed to die actually did die. Um,
Hmm.
so, but then I thought it was his choice to go over the top. I don't know
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that makes
if
total
that's the
sense.
way it's supposed to be. It's unexplained. That's the weird thing. It's just they just move on for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
True, true, true.
And we do get a sense that Ackroyd or Grocer is definitely keeping tabs on Blank, right?
Yes,
As soon
faithful,
as he loses the other hit that he has, he
Yeah.
knows who it was that took it, and I think that may well be the case. It may well be that Grocer was the original contracted hit, found out that somebody had taken out a contract to prevent it, and
Yeah.
so pulled in a lesser union member, should we call him, to be the fall guy, so that Grosser can still do the cleanup and do the hit.
That would make a lot of sense,
Yeah,
actually. I like that
yeah.
And
explanation.
it feels like this is like a very like foreign dignitary or businessman or possibly
Yeah.
like mobster kind of character
Yeah.
that's being taken out, right? So I think the
Yeah.
intention was always for it to be a big showy hit. That was
Yeah.
the statement, right? It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
loud, it's in your face. Like, we're making a statement here, we're not just taking somebody out. And so the cyclist was never going to do that. The cyclist couldn't have.
So that, in other words, what we're saying is, in this context, is that actually, Grocer is hired precisely because Grocer is Grocer. As you say, Neil, he's Grocer as a killer than Martin Q. Blank, and Martin Q. Blank is hired by whoever's trying to stop all of this, but they don't realize there's now two killers, not one. Because Blank doesn't realize there's the backup, or it may be, as you say, the first killer, and then Messenger's actually the backup. But whichever way around it is, it's fascinating that we can get. I mean, we're talking about 1 minute of a film, and all of this comes out of it. What a great movie, right? Like, now I'm starting to see what you mean, Dev, about the perfection of this minute. Right, minute 4 is just perfect, and that's before we even talk about Dan Aykroyd in detail. Like, we've talked about his character, we've talked about the way he comes in, we've talked about. I mean, you've been watching him as long as I have, Neil, and he's a man with all these not just hits behind him, but also as he gets to the 90s. There's all that TV work that he does to do with supernatural and unexplained phenomena, and he's the guy who plays the conspiracy theorist in one of my all-time favorite movies, Sneakers. And there will be in the next minute a little tiny nod to that, in what I'm guessing is improv dialogue from him. But even here, without dialogue, he's always been a wonderful actor because I think he's got a great face. And we only glimpse his face briefly, but it's all there. Everything you need to know about Grocer is right there. And I think it's always been like with him. I've always enjoyed like so much of his character in Ghostbusters is not just the voice and the tone and the way he speaks, it's that face. He's got a particular kind of face that really suits that character. And it was the same with Dragnet. And I know people who love the original Dragnet TV show hate the movie remake, understandably, because it's there to take the mick. But he himself achieves this kind of, I don't know how to explain it. He achieves this kind of, he makes that 50s straight-laced, straight arrow cop guy. Somehow, while everyone else is making fun around of him, he still carries himself with dignity and respect in the middle of all of that insanity. And I think that's quite cool.
He doesn't tend to play nice characters, does he? He plays like weird people. Even when he is the protagonist, the protagonist, he still plays the kind of odd one of the bunch.
And I think that's true all the way back to like his SNL days, right? And I mean, none of the three of us, I imagine, grew up watching SNL because it never really hit the British shores. But we did probably watch Blues Brothers, right? Which was pretty much just an SNL movie. And like much younger Dan Aykroyd, in a lot of ways, it kind of looks different. Like if I picture him mentally in that film versus Ghostbusters or Grosse Point Blank or any of the other much later movies, he almost looks like a completely different person. And yet he has that same, I'm playing a slightly weird character, but in a way that I think almost any other actor would try and do it and it would look ludicrous, and he pulls it off, right? He's this character that no matter what is going on, and there is some weird stuff going on in that film, he's always playing it straight. He's always super serious. in a way
Yeah.
that Belushi can't even manage.
Oh yeah,
and it
yeah.
really sells it. So
Mm.
yeah, it's just
Yeah,
phenomenal
Belushi's more relatable. He's like the everyman in this situation. He's
Yeah.
the one that's going, "What's going on here? Why have you got a cop car? Why are you
Mm.
doing this?" Whereas
Mm.
I can forget their names. It's Jake and
Jake and
Elwood.
Elwood.
Elwood. Um, so John Belushi is Jake, isn't he? And Elwood is
Yeah, Belushi is
Yeah.
Jake and
yeah,
Ackroyd is Elwood.
yeah, and Elwood is he's so serious through the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're on a mission
Yeah.
from God.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
over the top
Yeah.
once again.
Absolutely. I want, the order at the diner is one of the great classics where Belushi's like, I want 4 whole fried chickens, and then he goes, and some dry white toast, and that's Elwood, right there, the dry white toast, right?
Yeah.
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 4 fried chickens and a Coke, that's the order, sorry, and then dry white toast, and you're like, yeah, that's Aykroyd's characters. They're white bread, straight up, and then I want to talk about the class thing in a minute when we get to the next minute. Because then we see Grosse outside of a hit.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that when we get there. But yeah,
Yeah.
Aykroyd, as you guys say, is very much, he's always played that kind of character. But as the joy of it, as you guys say, is he plays straight in comedies, and it's all character work. What makes you laugh is the character, is the dialogue and the delivery. It's not just you laughing at someone gurning or mugging them for the camera.
Yeah, I felt here that his character is deadly serious, and he's like over the top and doing the job, and his favorite way of doing jobs, I suppose. But after watching it a couple of times, I just thought Dan Aykroyd is having such a great time here. He's loving playing that character. You can't see it in his face because he's being the serious man, but you just know inside he's having a whale of a time with this movie.
You're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Bill Murray's character in Zombieland as well. It's
Yeah.
like it's an actor who's probably like really too big for this role, especially at the time that Dan Aykroyd is doing this film. He's in Blues Brothers, he's in Ghostbusters. It has been a little while, but like he's a big name, and it feels like he's doing it just because he loves the role.
Oh, completely. You can tell he read the script and went for it. But
Yeah.
I also reckon that's part of how they got funding. I mean,
Oh,
you say John Cusack, Dan Aykroyd in a movie.
Yeah.
In the late 90s, and you can imagine somebody going, "Yeah, okay, we're on board for this one."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I'm actually really looking forward to tomorrow's, but this was minute 4 of the Grosse Point Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM, featuring your hosts, co-writers and co-producers, Dev Sodiger and Hugh David.
Today's guest was Neil McKay of the Man with the Music Minute podcast. Neil, where can people find you online?
You can find me on all social media as Chief Aberach, and my Linktree page with all my links is linktr.ee/MWAMM.
Fantastic, thank you. And you can find us on all good podcast players, also on YouTube, X, Spotify, at Debi Radio, and on our website, debiradio.com, all of which are spelled DEBI Radio. Yes, that's DEBI Radio.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time. It wasn't a moment, it was a feeling.